Moody, and I'm your host for In the Mood with GST Moody podcast. This podcast will discuss, educate, and have some lively debate and discussion on tax policy, taxation issues, leadership topics, economics, and the odd political comment as it relates to all of those previous topics, all in a fun and playful style. Come along for the ride.
Good day. My name is Kim Moody, and I'm your host for In the Mood with GST Moody podcast. And today, I'd like to talk to you about apparently a Christmas gift that Canadians are about to receive, and how that ties into proper taxation policy and whether or not it's good taxation policy or not. And I'm sure you can guess what my answer is. And so, with that, I've already written a couple of articles on the Financial Post on this. One that got released today, which is December the 3rd, 2024. Wow, I can't believe that. December 3rd already. It's almost the end of the year. And so, I wrote one today and I wrote one last week on these measures. And, in the whole scheme of things, these things are just silly and frankly, very, very costly. And so, although they may be wrapped up in, as Christmas presents and nice, shiny, wrapping paper, as I said in my article today in the Financial Post, these unfortunately are very, very costly gifts that really have no lingering benefits for Canadians. So I'll talk about that. And then I'll talk about how I think this needs to change. And we need to think longer term, both as a country and as individuals. So that's kind of the point of today's podcast. So for those who haven't heard about these measures, which I'm guessing most listeners have heard of the, so-called Christmas presents. So we have a GST, HST holiday on a long list of affordability items, some food items, children's diapers, Christmas trees, and liquor, but not cannabis. And these, are going to be zero GST, HST for a 2-month period from December the 14th, 2024 to February 15th, 2025. I'll comment on that in a minute. The second thing they announced was that there's going to be a $250 cash handout given to Canadians as long as they had $150,000 or less of income during their 2023 taxation year and met some, other criteria because they basically, from the looks of it, although details are lacking, they want to, make it as available to people that have worked, that earned their income. So pension type income doesn't look like it's going to qualify. Dividend income or investment type income won't qualify as part of that eligibility. So it looks like they're going to try and make it so that if you claim the CPP credit, which you're only able to do that if CPP was paid, then, that is one criteria. But again, details are lacking. And you can't be dead as of March 31, 2025 to get the $250 handout, and you can't be a non-resident. And those two items, I just have no idea how they're going to measure that and assess that on that date when they hand out the check. So I guess the thought is that they'll hand out the checks, but if you didn't qualify, they'll try to claw it back at some point in the future. I never, ever liked a system like that because as we saw during the COVID support period, there was lots of money shoveled out the door, but not so easy to claw it back or recover it when it was given to people that, haven't or weren't eligible for it. So in any event, I think that's a flaw in that as well. So are these so-called Christmas presents good for Canada? Well, apparently, according to our finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, apparently these measures are necessary in order to deal with a vibe session. Well, I don't know about you, but I have no idea what a vibe session means. But in my view, it continues to show how unserious this government is when it comes to proper taxation policy and economic policy. Instead, this measure is going to cost Canadians, or these measures are going to cost Canadians $6.3 billion. And because we don't have that hanging around, we're going to have to borrow those funds and incur additional interest costs. And even if Canada, the government of Canada, which of course has favorable rates as compared to, normal people, let's just say they pay 2% on that $6 billion or 6.3. I mean, that's over $120 million of additional costs annually. Again, I shake my head at that because those are significant amounts of money that we need as a country to get a handle on. So, do I like these measures? No, I don't. I think they're like handing out candy to children. The children get a sugar rush, and they get excited for a short period of time, and then all of a sudden it comes down. There's a crash, and there's no long-term benefits from the sugar rush, and that's exactly what this is. These measures are. There's no long-term benefits to Canada. All this is a political stunt by our current government in an effort to try to sugarcoat all the struggles that the average Canadian has been dealing with in terms of affordability because of high inflation, which was caused by our government with excessive spending. And so, again, these measures do nothing. The sugar rushes are nothing. And instead, as I've been saying in a lot of my writings and public speaking events over the last little while, I've kind of ripped off a simple analogy. This analogy has been around forever, but I like it because it's so simple to understand, and I think it's apropos. Think about the acorn. The acorn is a tiny seed which grows into the mighty oak tree. The oak tree can last and live for hundreds of years. And during its lifetime, it will provide long-term benefit for many wildlife who benefit from its trees. From its shade. And, in addition, it can grow thousands more acorns during its lifetime and plant forests of oak trees. And then when its life is ended, its hardwood, which is very valuable, can be used for furniture or to build homes or what have you. And so I love that analogy because if we plant acorns as a society, then there's long-term benefits for all of our residents today, maybe not as much as future generations because these trees take a long time to grow. But certainly the benefits will outlast us. And that's, in my view, what we need to be doing. Now, yes, Kim, I get it. In short-term election cycles, that's just not going to happen because it's really about trying to get elected. Yes, I get that. But, our country could be significantly struggling if we don't start thinking like that. And I think politicians need to at least swing that pendulum back somewhat into that, in that type of thinking. So instead of, handing out candy and getting sugar rushes, we need to swing the pendulum back so that ultimately we're planting some acorns for long-term benefit. So, that to me is what we need to really do as a country. In addition, what we need to do as a country is we need to really get our government spending under control because we can't simply continue to have, new tax measures to cover up the increased spending and the increased public debt charges that we're incurring as a result of the borrowing to fund this spending. We need to bring that down significantly, so that we get into that acorn type policy. Instead, I think the country needs to introduce productivity measures. What can we do, for example, as a country to help increase our productivity and compete with our biggest neighbor, the United States? Will we ever be on par with the United States in terms of our economic output? Probably not, because they're huge compared to us, and they're the gorilla in the room. But can our productivity compete with them? Absolutely it can. And one way we do that is certainly by bringing our costs under control and by improving our tax system. The easy thing, although it comes with significant cost cutting, and we have to think about how we do this carefully, is by bringing our personal tax rates more in line. Having personal tax rates at the high end of 54% in many provinces, most of the provinces in Canada, is ridiculous. That doesn't do anything to encourage risk-taking and entrepreneurship, which ultimately is the way that we're going to turn this country around. We need to reward risks and reward people who want to become entrepreneurs, incentivize them. And that's where, for example, the capital gains inclusion rate increased by the Liberals earlier this year was a big mistake, because it doesn't do that. It de-incentivizes risk-taking. And it has nothing to do with asking the rich to pay a little bit more, or for generational fairness, which is the way that it was talked about in the messaging. That's all political nonsense. Instead, again, we need to start planting acorns as a society and introduce productivity measures to help bring our country back from that. The second thing I think we can do is more at the individual level. And I wrote about this today in the Financial Post, which is, and I've written about it as well a number of times in previous pieces, but the Canadians' financial literacy needs to improve. When I talk to family members or friends, it's not uncommon for them to have no clue, the amount of tax they pay, how they actually pay it, the withholdings and what have you, where the money goes and what it's being spent on, and whether or not, Canada is on a train, on a path to success, or is a train wreck coming. They had no clue. And you know what? I don't blame them, because it's a difficult subject. But at the end of the day, the only way that we improve our country is by having individuals understand that when you see announcements like the GST holiday and the $250 handout, they're in a better position to assess whether or not that's a good thing. Instead of falling for political messaging, like, for example, and again, I wrote about this in the Financial Post piece that I published today, instead of falling for the political messaging that, conservatives, you oppose this GST holiday and cash handout, but you're all about axing the tax. Isn't that your calling card, because you want to cut the carbon tax? Even some family members I've talked to said, "Hey, Kim, how come the conservatives want to axe the tax, but they're opposing this GST holiday and this cash handout?" Well, it's pretty obvious. It's, maybe it's obvious for me sitting in my chair and having some experience, but this GST holiday and cash handout is a sugar rush. It's a temporary measure. It's a 2-month GST, HST holiday. If the government really wanted to improve affordability, why wouldn't they just simply make those cuts permanent? Because we can't afford it. That's why. And because it makes no sense. This is just simply a vote-buying gimmick and frankly, a bribe for the $250. And we need to get away from that kind of stuff. We need to, when the conservatives talk about axing the tax, there's a good reason for that. And yes, it's a cheesy phrase, but it's impactful. The carbon tax does nothing to try to achieve its objective. And second, it's expensive. It costs a lot of money. And so permanent tax reform is much more impactful than gimmicks. We need to get away from these short-term gimmicks, sugar rushes, and focus on long-term planning and long-term sustainability and, frankly, long-term success. And you only do that, in my view, by planting acorns. So I think that's it for today. Short little podcast, but hopefully I got my message across. And I always like to hear feedback, so if you disagree with something I have to say or want to provide alternate points of view, I'm always open. My email's readily available. My LinkedIn account is readily available. But if you want to provide other comments and feedback, I'm always open for that. So please do. If you like my content, please like and subscribe and share. So thanks, everybody. Have a great month. And if I don't chat with you, have a great Christmas and a great 2025. Bye now.
Well, there you have it. Another episode of In the Mood with Kim GC Moody podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Make sure you like and subscribe and share it with people if you think they'd enjoy it. Until next time, have a great day.